Okay, before I begin, I want to start off by saying this video is not going to have any kind of gameplay or anything like that in the background. So if it's easier for you or more convenient, feel free to, just listen. You won't really be missing anything otherwise. Um, but in this discussion, I want to share some sentiments that have already been widely expressed throughout the Destiny community. Um, Now, I don't have a huge following or presence within the space, but that doesn't mean I can't perhaps show a different perspective on some of the pain points that we as players have been enduring for quite some time now. Uh, with that said, the intended audience of this discussion is not the players. If that's you, you already know how many of us feel about the game currently, so you don't need me to tell you how you need to feel about the game. But this is instead directed towards Bungie and those involved with the development of Destiny 2. My hope is that I can take some of the feedback and criticisms and paint this picture in such a way that will perhaps spark a new approach or a different way of thinking when it comes to acknowledging and addressing the players' concerns and criticisms that we have. This stuff needs to be said. And more importantly, it needs to be understood. Not just heard, but understood. I have a little bit of a script I'm reading from, but mostly this is just kind of stuff that comes to the top of the head, but we'll see where it goes. So I'm going to discuss some different arguments presented about the seasonal model that will hopefully both properly temper player expectations as well as clearly point out why we as players have become so fatigued. Also, I will say that nothing that is going to be said in this video will be said with the intentions of harassment or belittlement. At no point throughout this talk will I directly or unfairly criticize any one person or group of people at Bungie or within the Destiny community in a hateful or vitriolic way. That is not my intention. So with all that said, let's just hop right in here. So an argument that I see in defense of the current seasonal model is these seasons are only $10. For all the content we get with it, $10 is not a big ask. And to be completely fair, that's a good point. I mean, looking at just the sheer amount of content we get for $10, like comparing to other live service type games, like there are not many other games out there, if any at all, that are providing the amount of content as frequently as Bungie is with Destiny 2 for $10 a pop. Like, as far as getting value for your money, it's a good deal in all seriousness, but it's not the amount of content that's the issue. It's the quality of it and the lack of originality. Destiny has been a game since 2014. So we are approaching 9 years of having played Destiny. So when it comes to seasonal content, the well is going to run dry at some point. There's only so many different ways to throw a ball at something. There are only so many different ways to dunk a relic or to kill a boss. We're almost at 9 years of Destiny, and every year having multiple seasons within a year, trying to introduce new activities, new loot, and new quests. The problem is that instead of trying to innovate new ways to earn loot, we find ourselves playing the same seasonal activities with a new coat of paint. For $10, you can play an activity that's extremely identical to ones we have played before. You can engage in a quest that's time gated, which results in drip fed content. to earn loot that may or may not be different from the hundreds of items we already have stockpiled in our vaults right now. So much of the new seasonal loot we're getting is made up of weapons that we've pursued in the past already. Like the craftable Ikelos weapons we have available this season makes it the third time these weapons have been issued. They originally debuted in Warmind back in year 1 of Destiny 2. They were brought back in Season of Arrivals, which I don't even remember what number season that was, but it's been over a year ago for sure. And bringing us to today where we can earn these weapons again to be able to craft them. So far, these are all points you may have heard before by different voices across the community. And what I'm about to say, it might be a silly analogy, but here's where I can hopefully paint that different picture that I mentioned before that will better specify what it is exactly that's causing such a massive burnout from the players in the community. So imagine you find a restaurant, whether it's from coming across it on your own or it was maybe recommended to you by a friend or something like that. But you find this restaurant, okay? This restaurant has some of the best chefs in the world, right? And you're excited to try it. And the meals that this restaurant offers are always $10, right? Every so often, the restaurant will change up their offerings and specials on their menu, but regardless, it's always $10 for a meal. So the first time you go, it's a great experience, right? You pay the $10 for a delicious meal that left you satisfied. You know, you're honestly impressed by just how much that $10 was able to feed you. So you decide to go back. This time, their menu offerings have changed, and you pay the normal $10 for your meal. And once again, you find it was a good dining experience, so much so that you continue to go back time and time again. But the more you eat there, the more you realize that while the names of the menu items and recipes change every so often, you're eating the same ingredients prepared in a different way. And if the same ingredients are used time and time again, even with the use of different quantities and mixtures of the ingredients, the experience of consuming the end product is lacking because of the same stale ingredients that have been on the shelf since the restaurant opened. Even the best chefs in the world can only make certain ingredients go so far once they've reached their shelf life. You know, simply changing the name of the menu item or changing the amounts and the mixtures of the ingredients does not all of a sudden make the end product fresh. No matter how the ingredients are used, if they are stale, the end product will suffer because of that. So currently, Bungie's recipe for seasonal content is no longer enjoyable because the ingredients they're using are old and stale. And if the ingredients are stale, we as players can't expect them to make something fresh with them. With only so many enemy types, only so many ways to dunk a ball, only so many ways to fight enemies, only so many ways to use a relic, and only so many ways to bank those motes, Guardian, there can only be so much enjoyment players can receive. This current formula has gotten so stale that it's starting to make players sick from consuming the outdated ingredients. When I go to a restaurant and I get sick from consuming outdated food, I'm far less likely to want to return after having an experience like that. And that's exactly what's happening with the Destiny player base right now. Players are not wanting to come back because they know what's waiting for them. Well, how would they know if they don't go back and try it? Some might ask. Because now more and more players that have stuck around are starting to leave the game because of the same reasons. And the players who left first just got fed up with it long before others have. just from looking at the player counts across all the platforms plummet and seeing and listening to all the discussion floating around, people can tell the game's continuous downhill decline because the requested changes just haven't been made, and they're still dishing up the same stale stuff. So, but we've heard from various team members at Bungie say that Destiny's best days are ahead. Words can only go so far, right? And from what I've seen lately, I can't say I believe what they're saying. I'm hoping to be proved wrong. I want to be wrong. But to say the best days are ahead, only to be given the same meal that Bungie's been cooking up for a few years now, is quite simply causing me to lose trust in a game and lose trust in a developer that I've fallen in love with. So don't tell me the best days are ahead. Show me. If you want me to keep coming back and playing your game, give me a reason to believe what you're saying is true. Now, Destiny's raids and dungeons are by far where Bungie flexes their skills the hardest. I think we can all agree. But even now, we're starting to see signs of repetition and unoriginality in the raids and dungeons. And Vow of the Disciple, we're using relics from other raids, like we're using the shield from Vault of Glass and the Taken relic from Last Wish. And the third relic is even reminiscent of like the prisms from Leviathan, or whatever they were called, from the Leviathan raid. But I mean, at least their function was different enough, even if it was only used to kill one specific enemy in, those encounters. Even in the Spire of the Watcher dungeon, the dungeon that just launched this season, you can't tell me that the first boss isn't an exact copy and paste of the first Garden of Salvation boss. I mean, the boss behaves exactly the same. Shooting the eyes is unchanged. The boss runs away during damage phases. It's a copy and paste. It's the exact same. It's one thing to use base models from previous assets for repurposing, like if the same kind of base model is used, but it's repurposed and redesigned to behave differently or to function differently when players interact with it, I'm fine with that. But to stick the same boss level enemy with no changes to its behavior or how the player interacts with it and just throwing it into a new location should not be okay. Which the sad part is, the other mechanics built around the fights in the new dungeon are great. But again, a stale ingredient in a new dish is only a detriment to the overall experience. I mean, think about how many times, we've had to fight different types of Crotas and Crota replicas. How many of those have we had to fight over various activities in over the years of Destiny? So Destiny's best content, the raids and dungeons, are also starting to suffer the same problems now. And going back to the seasonal model, as far as that's concerned, $10 can only provide so much. We get that. But based on what we've been being fed over the last several months, the more I'm led to believe that Bungie fails to understand that we aren't asking that the $10 we pay provide us with more. We're asking that the $10 we pay provide us with something fresh. So if that means reducing the number of seasons we have per year, I'm fine with that. Completely honest. Like, there's nothing wrong with having downtime in a game. But what's important is that we are given a reason, or that we're given something that makes us want to come back after that downtime. Quite frankly, nothing really made me want to come back and play this season. And why is that? I just wasn't given a reason. Like, nothing was said or done that made me excited to see what was going on in the world of Destiny. There was no marketing, no teasers. Everything was kept completely under wraps for 2 seasons in a row now, last season and this season. So nothing was done to like kind of reignite that fire, that excitement I have for the game. Yeah, is I don't understand that, honestly. Like, it just to me that rubs off of, or that like that just gives me the impression that you're not proud of what you're working on because you're not teasing it, you're not advertising it. Like, it's just, you're gonna work on it and just throw it out when it's done. Like, I know that's not the case. That's just the impression I get, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I could go on with like time gated seasonal quests and upgrade nodes and seasonal artifacts and artifact leveling, but ultimately those were all designed to be band-aids on a problem where deep reconstructive surgery is actually needed. So, but Joe Blackburn, the game director of Destiny 2, had this to say on recent player feedback. He had a thread of tweets out there. I'm going to read those verbatim. Quote, I just wanted to step in and say, heard loud and clear on the feedback with our current seasonal backbones. The team is excited to put some more creative risk in seasonal progressions, but there will be some time before the feedback catches up with the dev cycle. Preview. Coming up next is Lightfall and Season 20. While Guardian ranks and Neomuna destination pursuits are going to shake things up, on the seasonal pursuit side, our major focus is reducing complexity and improving the synergy between your seasonal pursuits and the rest of the game. Season 21 is at the halfway mark of development, and the team is currently looking at ways to differentiate progression aside from having a more novel activity setup in the works. Finally, as the last bugs on Season 20 and Lightfall are wrapping up, we're hardening our 2023 plans and are working to make improvements in this space every season next year. There's still novelty, thematic variety, and new ways to progress your character coming to Destiny over the next several months. But while we work to use this feedback in our future releases, I wanted to make sure everyone knows that your words are not falling on deaf ears. End quote. After reading this for the first time, part of me appreciates Joe cracking open the window, allowing us to get some kind of understanding on their dev cycle and the timetables involved. However, part of me is starting to come to the point where the words and the sentiment of "we are listening" is long past being an effective statement with Bungie's community outreach. Like, I couldn't count the number of times I've read the words "we are listening," whether it's from blog posts or Twitter posts, social media posts, wherever, by community managers or from somewhere within the team at Bungie. But just because one is listening does not mean that it's being comprehended. There are always new takes and new opinions coming from all corners of the Destiny community, but one thing that's been touched on for a long time now, and from a vast majority of the player base, I feel, is the seasonal model. So when Joe says it will take time for the feedback to catch up to the dev cycle, we've been constantly critiquing the seasonal model for several months now. I'm talking like pre-Witch Queen, like Beyond Light era. Like, how much time does it truly take to catch up? I mean, this isn't something new players have been talking about. This isn't feedback the community hasn't given before. So what's been done with the time since then? We have read the words "we hear you" a lot with nothing to show for it. What exactly do the words "we hear you" mean when what we've been saying for months has not been acknowledged directly? Another silly analogy, but perhaps you've witnessed a disobedient child out in public, or perhaps you have children of your own who have been disobedient and needed scolded for whatever reason. But if you've witnessed this or had to do this yourself, a child being scolded because of disobedience, their parents may say something like, "Hey, don't do that," or "Hey, are you listening to me, young man or young lady?" The child will nod their head yes, because they realize that they're being called out for their actions. Then once the scolding stops and they think they're in the clear, they'll go and disobey again, which basically says, yes, I was listening, but I'm still going to do the same thing again because I'm not taking what you say seriously, which is like spitting in the face of the parent that tried to get through to them. So merely saying the words, we are listening, cannot be normalized anymore. Again, show me that you're listening. You know, show me not only that you're listening, but that you're taking our words to heart. Now, I'm not saying that I'm scolding Bungie or that we're scolding Bungie, but the point is words can only carry so much value. I mean, at the end of the day, they are just that. They're words. If I go back to that restaurant and have another stale meal, and I go and tell the kitchen staff, I say, hey, the other customers all agree that the ingredients in our food, our meals, they're going stale. It's making our food taste bad. Do you guys think that we can get some fresh food to enjoy instead? And to be met with a response, got it, heard loud and clear. I can't expect that dish that I've already been served to be changed right away. I mean, time will be allowed for, the appropriate adjustments to be made. But when after that, no changes have been made, and the same stale stuff is still being served, that is what is disrespectful to the paying customer. So listening is only the start of mutual understanding and communication. It's acting upon what has been said is the next step. And so far, Bungie has shown no signs of having taken that next step. So how can I find value in the words, Destiny's best days are ahead, when Bungie can't put value into the words, we are listening? Again, to anyone involved with the creation and management of Destiny 2, I hope this paints a better picture of the position that we as players find ourselves in. We have such a limited view into your world. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we know what your job is and how to do it. I can only express how I feel based off of what I see. So, anyways, thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I want to close with a statement and a challenge. Destiny's best days are behind us. Please, Bungie, prove me wrong. Thank you.